Hi, I'm John Stevenson, and we're going to be looking at the promises and intercession that take place between God and Abraham as we come to Genesis chapter 18 in our continuing study of the book of Genesis. Genesis 18:1, Now the Lord appeared to him, that is to Abraham, by the oaks of Mamre while he was sitting in the tent door in the heat of the day. When he lifted up his eyes and looked, behold, 3 men were standing opposite him. Now we're going to find out who those men are in a second. Abraham's going to find out who they are eventually, but he looks up and he just sees 3 men. And when he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them and bowed himself to the earth. Now what's happening here is culturally very unusual. The master of the house, or in this case, the master of the tent, doesn't go running anywhere. He doesn't do the bowing, but Abraham is putting himself out there. He runs to meet them. He bows himself to the earth. He says, "My Lord, if now I have found favor in your sight, please do not pass your servant by. Please let a little water be brought, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree, and I will bring a piece of bread that you may refresh yourselves. After that you may go on, since you have visited your servant." And they said, "So do as you have said." So Abraham, and here's the unusual parts. So Abraham hurried into the tent. Now normally protocol would, he might invite them to a meal, but he would be very proper. He would be very staid. Instead, he hurries into the tent. He says to Sarah, "Quickly prepare 3 measures of fine flour, knead it, make bread cakes." Abraham also ran, that's the significant part, to the herd, and took a tender and choice calf and gave it to the servant, and he hurried to prepare it. And he took curds and milk and the calf which he had prepared and placed it before them, and he was standing by them under the tree as they ate. He's acting the part of a servant as he is serving the needs of his visitors. We're reminded of Hebrews chapter 13, verse 2, where we're told by the writer to the Hebrews, "Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by this some have entertained angels without knowing it." Abraham, I don't think, is fully aware of who his visitors are. And yet he's showing hospitality to them. He's putting himself out for them. And there's something special in the action of Abraham. And as a result, the Lord is going to speak to him. Verse 9, Then they said to him, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" And he said, "There in the tent." And he said, "I will surely return to you at this time next year. And behold, Sarah, your wife, will have a son." Now that's something that had been previously promised. But now God has shown up. He's one of these 3. I think that's significant there. And Sarah was listening at the tent door, which was behind him. Sarah just couldn't help it. She's listening in at the tent keyhole. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in age, just in case we'd forgotten that. Sarah was past childbearing, and she'd never been able to have children even when she wasn't past the age of childbearing. Sarah laughed to herself, saying, "After I've become old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also?" We're just a bit too old for that sort of thing to be taking place. And the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh, saying, 'Shall I indeed bear a child when I'm so old?' Is anything too difficult for the Lord? At the appointed time I will return to you at this time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Sarah denied it, however, saying, "I didn't laugh," for she was afraid. And he said, "No, but you did laugh," and God's going to have the last laugh. And indeed, you know what's coming. They're going to eventually name that child Yitzhak, laughter, and it's the same word that's used here. So we have Abraham's 3 visitors. They show up, and we saw Abraham's hospitality for these strangers. Then verses 9 through 15, God has given a prophecy about this child that Sarah is going to have. Now as we move into the next section, again there's going to be a prophecy. Although this time it's going to be concerning Lot and the place where he's taken up residence, the city of Sodom. And then we're going to see Abraham praying for Lot. his love, his concern for Lot exercised in his intercession on Lot's behalf. In that first section, we see blessings for Abraham and Sarah. In the second section, the background is going to be judgment on Sodom, and if Lot stays there, on Lot as well. In that first section, verses 1 through 15, we have the promise of a seed who's going to come through a miraculous conception, leading to a birth. In the second section, sin is going to bring forth judgment. Now, there's a correlation between what's happening here and what had happened earlier back in Genesis chapter 14. And we saw that the whole life of Abraham consisted of a series of parallels. Back in chapter 14, we'd had a foreign king by the name of Chedorlaomer who came and captured the city of Sodom. Here in chapter 18, God is going to judge Sodom. Back in chapter 14, one that had escaped had come and told Abram of Lot's capture. Now God comes and tells Abraham that he's going to judge Sodom. So again, there's a messenger that comes and tells Abraham either what has happened or what's going to happen. Back in chapter 14, Abram rescued Lot by force. He gathered a number of his servants, and they go out and they rescued Lot. Here in chapter 18, Abraham will rescue Lot through intercession and prayer. Back in chapter 14, Lot is saved by force of arms. Now he's going to be saved by divine intercession. 2 angels are going to go and take him out of the city and deliver him. Chapter 18, verse 16, then the men rose up from there and looked down toward Sodom, and Abraham was walking with them to send them off. They're leaving, and there's going to be a parting of company. The Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do, since Abraham will surely become a great and mighty nation, and in him all the nations of the earth will be blessed. Echoes of what God had first promised way back in Genesis chapter 12. Abraham has acted the part of a servant. Now God's going to treat him not like a servant, but like a king. He's going to bring Abraham into his counsels. For I have chosen him, God says, so that he may command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring upon Abraham what he has spoken about him. And the Lord said, the outcry of Sodom and Gomorrah is indeed great, and their sin is exceedingly grave. I will go down now and see if they have done entirely according to its outcry, which has come to me, and if not, I will know. Then the men turned away from there and went toward Sodom while Abraham was still standing before the Lord. So there had been 3 visitors. 2 of them go down toward the city of Sodom. One, that's the Lord, I take it. I'm not sure what that looked like. One is standing with Abraham, and he's in the presence of the Lord. Now, what's going to follow is intercession, Abraham interceding for Lot. And we have some lessons here on intercessional prayer. First of all, prayer changes things. Now, God knows what's going to happen. He knows about Abraham's prayer. It's not, that God's clueless. But still, part of that plan that God has for what's going to happen, part of that plan is Abraham praying. So that prayer really does matter. Sometimes we get the idea, well, gee, God knows what he's going to do, and he's got the end plan from the beginning, and so it doesn't matter what I pray. And that's not true. That's part of God's plan because prayer changes things. Secondly, the Lord is concerned about people. And the Lord has come in and is engaging Abraham and is inviting Abraham to engage with him. Faithful people are instrumental in bringing blessings to those with whom they live. God's going to say to Abraham, if there's 50 people that are righteous, and the number is not going to be hard and firm, we're going to see how that number changes. If there's a certain percentage of righteous people within that city, then the city is not going to be destroyed. And That means that the presence of godly people, even a small minority of godly people, has an effect upon everyone. Abraham came near and said, "Will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked?" Are you going to, you're going to judge Sodom. What about people in the city that are righteous? And he goes on to say, suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Will you indeed sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of the 50 righteous who were in it? Far from you to do such a thing, to slay the righteous with the wicked, so that the righteous and the wicked are treated alike. Far be it from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth deal justly? If you are a just God, and you are, then aren't you going to deal justly? And it's sort of a rhetorical question, but Abraham's putting it out there. Are you going to judge the righteous with the wicked? And judgment's going to fall, and so God's going to answer that. So the Lord said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare the whole place on their account. And Abraham replied, now behold, I have ventured to speak to the Lord, although I am but dust and ashes. Well, suppose the 50 righteous are lacking 5. How about if there's only 45 people? Will you destroy the whole city because of 5? And he said, I won't destroy it if I find 45 there. And he spoke to him yet again. Said, well, suppose 40 are found there. Notice how we went from 50 to 45 to 40. Suppose 40 are found there. And he said, I will not do it on account of the 40. And he said, oh, may the Lord not be angry, and I shall speak. Well, how about 30? There's an interesting negotiation that's taking place here. Suppose 30 are found there. And he said, I will not do it if I find 30. And he said, suppose 20 are found there. And he said, I will not destroy it on account of the 20. And he said, oh, may the Lord not be angry, and I shall speak only this once. Suppose, and notice we've gone from 50 to 45 to 40 to 30 to 20. And now he goes, suppose there are 10 found there. And he said, I will not destroy it on account of the 10. As soon as he had finished speaking to Abraham, the Lord departed, and Abraham returned to his place. Now, I really do think Abraham thought, okay, I'm sure there are at least 10. And he's brought that down to I've finally come to the point where Lot has been rescued. But, we've seen him go from, and the rest of the story, we're going to have the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and so there weren't even 10. But it sort of makes us think of the question, Abraham had started with 50 and then 45 and then 40 and 30 and 20 and 10. And Lord, would you save the city if there were at least one righteous person? And the story of the Bible is about how there was one righteous person. And that person was Jesus, who came and took the penalty of our sins upon himself so that we might be treated as if we were righteous people. And he doesn't stop there. Then he begins to work in our lives so that we might exhibit his righteousness as well. That's the story of what we call the gospel.